if you're not going through all your cases at least every 2 weeks or so, and at least touching every case, right? Just looking at, hey, what's coming up? What's on my calendar? What are the deadlines in the future? What are the deadlines right now? I think you're doing it wrong. You've got to have your hand on all your files at least every 2 weeks, if not more often.
From humble beginnings, Insurance Claim HQ has grown to one of the largest property casualty firms in the country. We didn't do it alone, and you shouldn't either. Every week, we're talking to claims professionals and top experts from all over, all to help you grow your business and make you stronger. Let's level up together. I'm Galen Hair. Welcome to the Level Up Claims Podcast. In the property claims world, the line between advocacy and ethics gets tested every single day. When money, timelines, and livelihoods are on the line, how you operate matters just as much as the outcome. Today's guest is Matthew Carlyon, an attorney here at Insurance Claims HQ with a unique background in insurance litigation and legal ethics. From being a prosecuting attorney on misconduct for the state bar in Nevada to handling real-world claim disputes, Matthew brings a perspective that helps professionals understand not just what the law allows, but what integrity demands. Let's jump in. Matthew, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I love getting to interview one of our own because obviously I rarely get to do that. We got 52 weeks in a year and only so many lawyers, so I don't get to do it often. And you are one of the newer attorney members to the team, so welcome as well.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I've really enjoyed everyone. Everyone I've met so far has been just wonderful. So,
well, thank you. That's good to hear. One of the things we actually did another episode recently on hiring and how you find the right people, which I think everyone's still searching for generally. But you've got such an interesting background, right? So I consider myself to be like an alternative major as well. I majored in opera, which is not popular amongst lawyers. You majored in what?
I majored in fiction writing, actually.
Yeah. So
yeah.
How first of all, what got you into that? And then later, I guess I'll ask what got you into this.
So, I mean, I have always been just a huge, reader, and I always loved, all my English classes in school. And I had a really supportive high school English teacher who was like, you're really one of the best writers I've seen in a long time. And I really think you should, try to develop that if, it's something you want to do. And it was. So I ended up going to Columbia College Chicago, which is a creative arts school in the Loop, downtown Chicago, because they had one of the only actual like fiction writing degrees, and a unique style of training writers called the Story Workshop, which I thought was terrific. And so I went through that and graduated, and unfortunately graduated in 2008.
Ooh, jobs were everywhere.
Writing career. Because there was just no work of any kind for people with real degrees, right? Let alone fiction writing degrees. So sort of bounced around for a while, and then decided, well, I'm going to try out law school, and took the LSAT and got into UNLV, the Boyd School of Law, which is one of the, actually at the time I went, it was #1 ranked for legal writing. I'm not sure if it still is or not, but that was like its big thing. It was up and coming, moving up the charts quickly, but it always had the best legal writing program. So I was like, well, at least I can apply my writing skills somewhere, somewhere in the world that it'll be good for. So,
yeah, I'm actually pretty familiar with Boyd. I'll tell you why in a second. But so yeah, let's even back up a little bit, because that's one of the things. You are one of a handful of people in my life, I believe, that I've met that grew up in Vegas.
Yeah. I lived in Vegas most of my life. Moved there when I was very small, 2 or 3, and lived there till I was, in my mid-20s, and did school in Columbia there in Chicago for a while. And then after I graduated, went back to Las Vegas and lived there for another 10 years or so. So yeah, a lot of my life was done in Vegas.
I will tell you that I find that the folks I have met from Vegas are like surprisingly well adjusted, considering all the like general public image of Las Vegas, right? What do you think the key is, like growing up in Vegas? Do you think you had a different upbringing than like maybe someone from Arlington, Texas, like me? Or was there anything unique about growing up in Vegas?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know how someone is raised in Arlington, Texas, so I can't necessarily answer that question, in a coherent
Pretty
manner.
Bible belty, pretty Bible belty. But
I will say, Vegas is obviously a city with a lot to do. If you're an adult, if you're a kid, not so much, but
mm,
you're still exposed constantly to all the things that Vegas offers, all the, uh, casinos and some of the lifestyle stuff they have there, right? Because everything's on billboards and advertisements and, you have the trucks with the neon strip club ads driving down the middle of the street, right? So, um, all the movie theaters are inside casinos. You have to go into the casino to go see a movie, right? There's
yeah.
hardly any standalone theaters in the whole city. So you definitely get exposed to a lot of that sort of, sin aspect of it, right? And that's one of the reasons I left. Once I had my daughter, I didn't want to raise her in the city. Um, but
Because yeah, forces a
mm,
lot of conversations early, right? That parents
yeah,
have to have
yeah,
with kids. Like,
absolutely.
Daddy, what's a strip club? Why do I keep seeing ads? Not the worst thing in the world, right? But like, not a conversation you want to have with your child at
Yeah,
or
and
at so
and
early an
frankly,
age.
the public schools are a disaster in Nevada. Las Vegas has one of the worst school systems in the entire state. I think they're ranked like bottom, the third or second worst schools. They had actually is sort of the thing that sort of um, was the straw for me that broke the camel's back. They enacted legislation to legalize marijuana, and the promise they made was that all the tax revenue from that would go towards the school systems.
Hmm.
And everybody was really excited about that because the school systems were so bad. And they did what they promised they would do, and they passed the marijuana. They gave the money to the school systems. Then they removed all the money that they were getting that wasn't marijuana money. So they just took all the money out to make it, a wash. And it was just so ridiculous that, I mean, I guess they never promised not to do that, but obviously that was not the spirit in which we all voted for that particular law.
Yeah,
So,
you thought you were
yeah,
getting a massive
yeah.
boon to your school system.
And instead, they built, they gave Sheldon Adelson millions of dollars to build a football stadium out there instead. So, whatever. Gotta have sports, I
Cool.
guess.
I mean, look, I love sports. I like football, especially, but I'd rather see, I guess if I had to choose, hopefully there would be no choice. I'd rather see kids get an education, you know?
Yeah, and I'm much happier out here now in the suburbs of Chicago, and my daughter goes to a wonderful school and loves going to it, and we're so much happier out here.
I mean, Chicago's great. Other than I don't love your winters. I'm not a huge
Yeah.
fan of your winters.
You
Um,
know, to me, it's not a big difference between the Vegas summer and the Chicago winter, right? You don't go outside either of them really.
fair.
The biggest difference is you don't have to shovel sunshine, but you get used to it, I've got a nice fireplace and, some blankets and a big coat.
After COVID, I went to a lawyer conference and it was like one of the first ones, post COVID that they were doing. And it was in Vegas in August. And yeah, and you're laughing and I'll make you laugh even harder. As is usual for these Vegas lawyer conferences, there's like a hotel and casino where everything is, right? But then the evening events are at different hotels and casinos. And it's like, why? Because I now have to take a cab literally half a block because it is 192 degrees outside. Maybe I'm being dramatic, but I was like, the second you step outside, you feel your soul leave your body, and you're like trying to grab it back. It's wild.
And it's funny too because the AC in the casino is cranked up so high. It's like 40 degrees in the casino and then 110 outside. So you have this massive jump, in temperature and your body just like shrivels up, right? Uh, in fact, I reckon people ask me like, "Oh, I'm going to a convention, what should I bring?" Like, "You should bring a light sweater. It's gonna be cold in the casino.
Yeah.
It's gonna shock you to bring a light sweater, to Las Vegas in August, but you're gonna need one." No,
Yep, but then if you wanna go down the street, if you're at a conference to the, like, lifetime achievement reception,
don't
you need to change into a tank top and shorts and then have a pair of decent clothes to change back into,
yeah,
because you are not
don't
leaving that casino in a suit at all.
yeah, and don't touch any of the, doorknobs when you go outside either, because 'cause they're gonna be very hot.
Ooh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
That's a very good point. Yeah, that pavement, I mean, I grew up in Texas where our pavement in August would give you 2nd to 3rd degree burns. I can't even
right.
imagine how it is in Vegas. So yeah, and leaving makes a lot of sense. But you started your legal career in Nevada. I'm very familiar with Boyd School. I promised I would tell you why. So I was the vice chair of the ABA's, the American Bar Association's Law Student Division when I was in school, and your rep was the most unforgettable human in the world.
Who
Every
was it?
school, yeah, I'll tell you, but I don't think you'll know him because every single school had their own representative, right, across the entire country that would essentially be a voting member of what we call the delegation. So when we pass things, et cetera, they'd have the right to participate. And he actually ran for office as well beyond being a delegate. His name was Richard Manhattan.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, he insisted on going by Dick Manhattan, which everyone just loved because it felt like it was a porn name, right?
No.
And but he was very memorable, like the way he looked, the way he spoke. But he loved Boyd School of Law. Loved Boyd School of Law. I don't know whether any of this is true, but he said that Boyd School of Law had a long history of being dissenters. So, he would sometimes get up and dissent even on something that like everyone was pretty okay with, just because he's like, following the Boyd School of Law tradition, I am dissenting, and here's all the reasons that you should reconsider this. And I was like, cool,
Yeah, I
man.
mean, I'll say first of all, the boys' school didn't have a long history of anything because they had been established for like 10 years when I went there.
Yeah.
So in terms of long history, I'm not sure you can really attribute that to the school when you have schools out there for 60, 80, 100 years.
Also a
But I
fair
will say
point.
that Vegas is very much a city where the people are sort of more libertarian and more like we're just gonna be ornery to be ornery and everybody can get off my land basically. So it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of them were just dissenting to dissent.
Yeah, I mean, it was fine. They never caused any problems. But the legal research and writing thing was very real. Boyd puts a ton of resources into refining their legal research and writing program, which is good. But it's funny to me now, right, as a practicing lawyer that I think about, because like when people hire a lawyer, they think I want like a bulldog, and I want someone that's going to get up in court and just demolish the other side. And what they don't realize, I believe strongly, is that 99.9% of winning a case is done via the briefs, the motions, and the decisions that are made in the research and writing process, right?
Yeah. I remember one time I had a case against an attorney, and he was so good in the courtroom. He was amazing. He was articulate and well spoken, and just like all of his arguments in the court were so good. It was so hard to even come close to him. But then I won against him when I wrote. Like every time I wrote, he would write this terrible brief, and just always didn't have that skill. And I won so many cases against him because I just had that ability to write better than he did. And that was the thing that really locked in each aspect of the cases. So I think it's lawyering is a lot harder than people think about. Even litigation, right? If you're doing trial work, right? Obviously, there's a lot of charisma and presence and cross examination you got to do, but you got to prep that stuff. You got to write the question. You got to write the opening statement. You got to write the closing statement. That's all very much something that's got to be done by a writer who's versed in those legal writing aspects to have a good impact on the audience.
Yeah. And this might be a softball question, but what do you think you learned in your undergrad that helped you become a better legal writer? Because they're fundamentally different skills, related, but different.
I'll say first of all, I think they're more related than even anybody thinks because at the end of the day, good lawyering is about telling a story. You have some of the same concepts. You got to have a good hook, right? You got to have a good theme. These are all things that you learn in fiction writing or in creative writing classes, in any kind of storytelling capacity. You have to have the ability to tell a good story and to make the facts work in an entertaining way, right? So in terms of unique things to the legal writing program at Boyd, I think just some of the assignments they had, access to the kinds of things we wrote, the sorts of briefs and case law we were looking at, and then the feedback we got from the teachers was really helpful. I'm not certain how it's done in other schools, but it was just intensive in terms of the number of things we wrote, doing a lot of practice, a lot of hypothetical assignments, things like that. So we really got a chance to write a variety of things and get really good feedback on it from professors.
Yeah, and I think so many schools treat it as an afterthought. It's a required, mandatory component of your education in your first year of law school, but many many schools don't teach it afterwards, and many schools kind of just check off the boxes that are required in that first year as for ABA accreditation. Quick disclaimer, if you're listening to this and because I always get hate mail when I talk about law school, if you're in law school somewhere and your experience doesn't gel with this, it could be an accreditation issue. And also, I'm old and I don't know what every single school requires now. I can only speak to what was required when Matthew and I were in school because we were very close in years. But I don't even know what the kids do these days.
Yeah, I recall at Boyd certainly they require 2 years of legal writing, so that may
Mm.
also be a difference between other schools.
Well, that's because no, I mean that was the case back then too. It was double. They required double the requirement just to get accredited. Um, I went to Tulane, and you could officially finish 3 years of law school while only taking that first year legal research and writing course. That's all
Yeah.
they needed from
That's
you. So, which is fine. I mean, each school does what they think they should do, but I think given how much of a case is won on the briefs, I think the writing is so important. And the other thing that I think is important, at least, and one of the things I look for with lawyers is like you got to understand the anatomy of a case. There's like three things. I think case management is big, the ability to kind of think about a case and move it. Research and writing is big. And then the third thing that will tank your case, will tank your career, and will tank my law firm is ethics, right? And
yeah.
you have a unique background in ethics. You are someone that people used to be terrified of, right? Um,
A terrified or annoyed at is more appropriate, but yeah, I used to work for the, Nevada State Bar, equivalent to the ARDC here in Illinois, and I was an ethics prosecutor, so I would get, assigned cases where there was an ethics complaint from a member of the public or a judge, and we would have, investigators who acted as paralegals and investigators, and they would sort of work up the case and get the facts, and then they'd give it to us, and we'd do a write-up of, our recommendation to the board. And then if we wanted to actually discipline the attorney, felt there was enough there to, and, put discipline on them, we would actually have an adversarial, essentially trial, with witnesses and evidence and all the procedures in front of the three-member panel. And then after that, this one would go up to the Supreme Court, and we do, briefs on the recommendation from the panel. So essentially, it was decided by the panel and then affirmed by the Supreme Court. But the Supreme Court obviously has their own determination. They get to essentially review everything over again when they do their review of it. So
yeah, and the Supreme Court there treats it as like a solely appellate review, right? You don't go in for another evidentiary hearing in front of the Supreme
right,
Court.
right, right. But they but
Yeah.
they they get to look at it top to bottom and decide if it's appropriate or not. It's not as if they don't never bounce it back. They make the decision whether it's to accept the recognition of the bar or whether it's to institute something different. It's their choice at the end of the day. They don't bounce it back to us again.
And the reason for that, guys, if you're at home not a lawyer, is generally speaking, the vast majority of states, I think all states, the bar is governed by the judiciary branch. As you guys know from civics, we have three branches of our government: legislative, executive, and judiciary. And typically, lawyers are governed by the judiciary branch. We are essentially a self-regulating profession, but that does not mean lawyers are running the show. It means the judicial branch is running the show. So Matthew's done this, and this is unfortunately something that comes up. And even a lawyer that's really tried to keep their nose clean, I think their whole career, they may eventually get a bar complaint. What are some things that you saw then, or even that you just have seen now, because we'll cover your next stop in your career soon, that you think lawyers in our industry are most susceptible to and need to watch out for?
The number one complaint any bar association gets, whether it's Nevada or Illinois or any place, is communication with the client. Right? If you're not communicating with the client effectively and promptly, then you're gonna wind up with a bar complaint at some point. Um, and the best way to avoid that is just to look, even if your client, if you're busy, right? You're in a trial or something, your client emails you to say, "Hey, look, I'm in a trial. I can't get back to you for 3 or 4 days." And then 3 or 4 days later, send an email with the update, right? You don't
Yeah.
have to just be on the ball and had a stand up every time, but you cannot ignore your client's emails or phone calls. You can't let a case go for a period of time until things start to be an emergency. You've got to communicate with your clients as often as possible. And I really think that if you're not going through all your cases at least every 2 weeks or so, and at least touching every case, right? Just looking and say, what's coming up? What's on my calendar? What are the deadlines in the future? What are the deadlines right now? I think you're doing it wrong. You've got to have your hand on all your files at least every 2 weeks, if not more often.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And the communication, there's like another step to that I think so many lawyers miss. I do know there are lawyers that ignore clients, right? But I don't think usually it's intentional. I think what happens is what you just described. I'm busy, and the client texted me or called me. And I think I make it worse. Not me personally, but I think a lawyer makes it worse because the lawyer responds, "Can I call you later?" They send the automatic text, right? Or they say, "Yeah, I'm in trial. I'll call you next week." And then they don't. And now, not only are you ignoring the client, but you're breaking a promise to the client because you have said, "I will call you next week. I will call you." Can I call you later implies you will actually call them later, right? Um, you know, give me a minute. That's one of the most common, and it's not even automated. You have to type it in. So you're very intentional about saying, give me a minute. And then you go do 5,000 other things. I think there's another step here. I'd be curious your thought. I think as soon as you do communicate with the client, um, and that could be one way, meaning you read the text message from the client, or you get the voicemail from the client, or you respond. I think there's another step, which is just from a purely a time management standpoint, whatever your way of doing things is, for me, it's calendar. Go into your calendar, look at when you can call that client and calendar in. Call client Smith and then do it, right? Even if the client's not available at that time and you have to then shoot them an email saying, hey, when's a good time? You can establish, at least through your phone records, and ideally in a case management system, you should be taking this down, right? You can establish, hey, client texted me today. I did call the client on Tuesday, like I said. Client didn't answer. I left client a voicemail, and then I followed up with an email. Hey, client Smith, um, sorry I didn't catch you. I'm out of my trial. Please write me. However, I'm going to be busy again. So please write me back with some days and times that are good for you, and I'll try to find some time to work. Like, treat it just like you're dealing with opposing counsel or something else, and set an appointment. And if they're not the type to set an appointment, you set the appointment unilaterally yourself. You don't have to like get with the client and be like, how does Tuesday at 2 work? If that's your next time, calendar it so you don't forget.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's exactly what I do myself is I just, I'll say like, "Hey, I have time available Thursday afternoon, I'll call you at 2." Right? And it doesn't work for them. They say, "No, can we do 3 or 3:30?" Like, "Whatever." But I have my assistant put it on the calendar. I say, "Hey, you calendar this thing. I'm gonna call Joe whoever at 3 o'clock on Tuesday," and it gets on my calendar, then 3 o'clock rolls around, my thing goes off, and I give them a call. And if they're not there, I leave a voicemail, right? I put it in the management case. But you're right, that's when we get these complaints at the state bar, um, the reason people get dinged for ethics on that is because they don't have anything to show they were communicating, right? They say, "Oh, I called them, every 3 weeks or whatever." Well, then write it down somewhere. Show me the emails you sent them. Show me whatever you have to say you did that thing you're telling me you did, because they're saying you didn't, right? And I can't just take your word for it. You got to have some kind of evidence. You're the professional. You're the attorney, and it's your responsibility to ensure you're communicating with your client. Right?
Yeah.
And if you have those things, it gets dismissed so fast, right? It's so easy to get these things dismissed as long as you're actually recording the things you're doing, and not just forgetting about them. So,
Yeah, so fun fact, I won't provide any details to protect the innocent or not so innocent, but one of our Illinois lawyers actually got a bar complaint. It was very serious as far as the allegations were. The allegations were that we had not returned this client's calls in months and months and months, and we'd allowed their case to just like, you know, die on the vine. And it was very serious. And I was very surprised because the attorney I got it for is just very, very diligent and responsible. I mean, I would have been surprised for any of my Illinois attorneys, but like I have had some new lawyers in various states that I'm like, okay, we got to watch them carefully. And this was not the case, right? But as you know, Matthew, we have this like communications log in Filevine, and we also track our text messages because we send them through Filevine. So what we hired a lawyer because, the lawyer that represents himself has a fool for a lawyer, for a client. But we hired an ethics lawyer, but we essentially ended up printing out the communications log, like exporting it to PDF, sending it to the lawyer, taking the text messages and doing the same thing. And he was like, oh man, this is the easiest response to a disciplinary complaint I've ever had to do. Um, I think 60 days after we responded, our attorney got a letter saying they were closing the file and there was nothing to do. And, she's like, oh my gosh, that was so good. I was like, of course it was because you communicated with the client and we could prove it. Like those are the two components,
yep,
right?
absolutely,
Um,
100%.
let's talk briefly about, so then you ended up coming to Illinois and you
Yeah.
did actually get into the first party world, but you started on the defense side, right?
Well, it's actually funny. I started out my career in bankruptcy. And I did mostly adversary proceedings. Essentially, when you're in bankruptcy and you have a lawsuit, the lawsuit gets brought into the bankruptcy court as an adversary proceeding. So I had litigation work as adversary proceedings in bankruptcy court. It was like a very niche area of law, right? Um, and then I transitioned from there into ethics. And when I moved to Chicago, to Illinois, I joined a firm as in-house ethics counsel. It was a national bankruptcy firm. So there's
Hmm.
great crossroads of both my career histories. And then COVID started. Like the
Ugh.
day I joined the firm is when the whole lockdown started going into effect. I never even got into the office. I just worked from home the whole time I was there. But because bankruptcies are driven by evictions and foreclosures, the firm lost like 70% of its revenue,
Yeah, because of
and
the
I ended up
moratorium. Yeah.
getting laid off because it's sort of a luxury position having ethics counsel in the first place at a national firm. And so I sort of had to scramble during the middle of COVID to find other work, right? And so I ended up joining a national and international insurance defense firm. So that was interesting, doing a lot of first party property insurance defense, and love the people I worked with. They were all terrific people, just you know, very nice and professional individuals. And ultimately, sort of wanted to come do something that was more on the side of helping people. Just like with my ethics career, right? I really enjoyed about that was that I was on the side of the people and that I was helping make something better. And I never felt like that when I was doing insurance defense. Certainly, it's work that has to be done, and it's good that we have a system where both sides are heard. But I wanted to help people more than giant corporations and that kind of thing. So, was really happy to see the opportunity out here, and I actually knew one of the Illinois attorneys because of cases I had against him, and asked him some questions about the firm, and ended up applying because of that. So it was great.
Yeah, you were reported as
Yeah,
having been a
you're
formidable adversary, so we were happy we got you over to the other side, like, honestly, best way you can take out your opponent, right? Just have him come work with you. You know,
I'm good work, right? Yeah.
it's ethical, it's clean, it's fantastic. No, we're so thrilled to have you. We're kind of winding down to the end of time, but before we do, I feel like I'd do us a huge disservice, if we didn't at least explore this for a second. Where do you see the landscape of property claims in Illinois headed?
Well, I mean, I think it depends a lot on the weather, right? Illinois has become a lot a lot more into sort of the hurricane tornado alley area.
Mm.
That's sort of been migrating because of climate change, and we're seeing a lot more extreme weather events in Illinois, and sort of all the Midwest that were not we weren't quite in the area for before, but now we're starting to get more and more into that area. So it'll be interesting to see how much that affects insurance rates and insurance coverage, and do insurance companies start putting in more exemptions or exclusions into their policies. I think that they've done good work in Illinois on sort of requiring insurers to follow certain guidelines. There's some really good bad faith laws out here, some really good instructions on how insurance companies have to do certain things like warn the insured about, time period expiring for final lawsuit, things like that. But it'll be interesting to see how much of the insurance industry in the Midwest starts adapting to the more extreme weather we're getting out here.
Yeah, I agree. It's been a wild ride, but you and I will be there every step of the way.
Yeah.
Matthew, thanks for joining us. Before you go, though, if you don't mind, what does it mean to you to level up?
Well, I think leveling up is just the process of incrementally improving, right? So you take the things you've learned and you apply them in new ways and new situations. I think once you're able to do that, to learn from whatever you failed at doing before, or even learning from what you succeeded doing before, right? To implement those things in the next scenario. I think just those improvements constitute a level up, right?
I agree. Matthew, you've got a lot to do communicating with clients, fighting insurance companies, and hopefully spending some time with the family. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Happy holidays.
I'd like to thank Matthew for joining us on the podcast. I am really, really proud to call Matthew one of our own. As you know, he came from the defense side. He was a formidable opponent, but more than that, a family man who's ethical, who really cares about his clients and wants to do good. It's that type of culture that we're trying to build, and it's ultimately that I believe allows us to advocate so effectively for our clients and our folks. So thanks again to Matthew for joining us on the show. Follow us on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player, and make sure you like and subscribe to keep up to date on our latest podcasts.